Torah, and you will be like Abraham, Genesis 26:4 and 5, who not only received my Torah, he received the chukim, the Torah that he didn't understand, and because he received my promise, I counted to him for righteousness, and then he was not a leaky vessel, and I taught him Torah. Amen. First, he received the promise of Yahweh. The promise that, what is the promise? Physical multiplicity, through which a nation who will be spiritual Kohanim before Yahweh, Israel, is born. And once Abraham and Sarah birthed Israel, once they became the first crossovers, Hebrews, he then said, you're not a leaky vessel. You're a visionary. You'll walk in the unseen. You'll go to the unseen places. You will walk where men fear to tremble. And so therefore my Yeshua is coming, my righteousness, my salvation. You have that. Now I will give you my Torah. Isaac, I'm going to renew this promise to you because your father Abraham guarded my chukim, obeyed my mishpatim, and most importantly, perhaps most importantly, you with me, Chris? You with me? He obeyed my charge. That's where that 80-20 rule comes in. The Torah is written. The Torah is recorded. The Torah is settled forever in the Shamayim. The bottom line is this, Brother Wilbur. Will you obey the charges of the Torah? If you obey the charge, you're not a leaky vessel. You're like Abraham and Sarah, who not only could contain water, they can contain the seed of what would become all the Israelite nations because they obeyed how many promises? One promise. Yahweh said, I will fill all the nations of the earth with your seed, because you are vessels that hear the word and do it and obey it and guard. Not just shake your head and give mental assent to my charge, but you guard. Oh, man. Amen. Amen. When Rabbi Moshe shows us something in Deuteronomy, we don't just shake our heads. We guard it when Aunt Jemima tells me it's not cool. We guard it when the teacher in college tells me that I have to explore other religions. And that there's truth in all religions. I guard the charge of the word of Yahweh through the man of Yahweh. Amen. 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 Not just enough to study Torah, Sister Cecile. The question you must ask yourself in your life on a regular basis. You with me, Savior? On a regular basis. Do I guard the charge? Yahweh's sitting up there in heaven going, charge! Charge! You're the head, not the tail. You're the lender, not the borrower. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So Yeshua is coming, Yahweh says, to those who are like Abraham and Sarah, who have imputed righteousness. Yeshua is coming, and he's coming with my Torah. So Isaiah 54:1 is the response of individuals in the nations to Torah, who received the revelation of who is Israel. Look, only his nation will listen to the Torah of Mashiach. I'll say that again. Listen, only his nation will listen to the Torah of Messiah. Look at verse 4. Did you see that? Not everybody listens to the Torah. I'm going to show you something. Look at verse 4. Listen to me, my people. Give ear to me, O my what? Nation. Not churches, denominations. Nation. For a Torah is coming through me. My judgment will be the light of the nations, but my Torah will be listened to by my nation. In other words, the judgment of those who obey and disobey the Besorah is going to be the light of all nations, but not my Torah. My Torah that comes from me, that will be given and will be heard and received by only one nation. People say to me all the time, what is an FAQ? Noah, what is an FAQ? A frequently answered... So you didn't think I had a sense of humor, huh? What is an FAQ? An FAQ is a frequently answered question. Rabbi, I've been reading your two-house stuff. I've been spending a lot of time on your website. How do I know that I'm an Israelite? The answer is right here. Are you listening and guarding the charge of the Torah? Are you following through Are you being a vessel that can contain more and more and more of Yahweh's ways and more of Yahweh's halakha? Then it says here, O my nation, because the only one that will give ear to my Torah is my nation. So if you're in the church and no one in the church is giving heed to Yahweh's Torah, they have not returned as Yahweh's nation. They may be physically Yahweh's nation, but they have not returned like Abraham and Sarah, who are what? Holding the richness of new wine. Remember Yeshua said? Yeah. New wine must be put into renewed wineskins, or else they will burst. Exactly. You can't take Torah, put them in the church, and have them hold the revelation. You can't take Torah and give it to the kingdom hall and expect the kingdom hall to hold the revelation. You have got to put new wine into new wineskins, somebody. Amen. Amen. So the key to receiving the Torah is not being pharisaical, a Pharisee. It is becoming the container that can hold all the new wine. Yahweh. So the key is not the Torah. The Torah is already settled forever where? In the Shamayim. Governor, where's the Torah? Settled forever in the Shamayim. So where is the work? Where is the construction taking place? In you and me. To make sure that we are what? Renewed vessels to hold what? The new wine, which is not really new. It is what? Old. Because the new wine is the wine that's the oldest. Is it not?
That's correct. Yes.
You bring out the new wine that's been what? Well, there's a proper term that I'm not familiar with. Aged for the longest amount of time. And when it's perfectly aged, what do you do? When that wine is perfectly aged in the natural, what do? You bring it out. Remember that rule when you spend time with your brothers and sisters in Yeshua. Who are the ones who hear the word and apply it? What did Yeshua say? Hey, Yeshua! His Talmidim said, your mom and your brothers are outside. They're knocking on the door and they want to get in. And Yeshua said, no, you're wrong. My brothers and sisters are here. They're inside, not outside. Why? Because they are not leaky vessels. They're sitting at my feet and drinking in everything that I'm sharing. Can I hear a good amen? Amen. Ask yourself, have you been leaking too much? You hear things, you're charged with the words of Torah, and sometimes they just leak right through you. You ought not to be like that, brothers, because you'll wind up dazed and confused. Big time. And there are a lot of believers out there who are getting beat up all the time by the devil. You know why the devil's beating them up? Because they're not keeping the charge that they've already been charged with.
Amen.
They're waiting for new charges, a new revelation, a new battery, a new preacher, a new sermon, a new method, a new website, a new understanding, a new rabbi, a new congregation. Start keeping the charge of Yahweh, and you will become that vessel.
Amen.
That visionary who saw what only a visionary can see. And if you're going to rebuild the nation of Israel, you have to be a visionary who listens to the Torah of Mashiach and instructs others how to obey the Torah of Mashiach. Look at verse 5. Is anyone enjoying?
Amen. Amen.
I said, is anyone enjoying?
Amen.
Amen.
Look at verse 5. My tzedakah is near. My Yeshua will go forth, and my arm shall judge the nations. Your arms to Israel, my arms, shall judge the nations. The coastland shall wait upon me, and my arm, and in my arm they shall what? On my arm they shall what?
Trust.
Those who trust. Those in the nations who have, listen, who have waited for many long years for the Mashiach to come and to teach us Torah himself, not through traditional rabbis, but himself. We're waiting on his Torah, and we're waiting. We are the ones who will hear and be Israel. We've been waiting. The coastlands of the earth, the nations of the earth have been waiting for Yeshua's Torah. We believed Yahweh. We believed the promise that we are Israel and that we are saved by Yeshua HaMashiach. And we look to Abraham and Sarah, and now we wait for Yeshua's Torah that comes from his mouth. Are you with me, Rivka?